Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Uh it's been a crazy week. I've been sick, which is not a good thing, but hey, I'm pulling through. When you have kids, they bring everything home. God knows what they gave me, but I was sick. Um but I survived. But it's been crazy. And during this whole time, I actually got a chance to connect with a great guy. He's an author. He's been featured in newspapers. Overall, just a great individual with a great mind. Um, I'm not gonna ruin the biography of this guy because I want him to sort of let us know who he was and how he got here. So without further ado, let's welcome my guest, Adam. Adam Coleman.
What's
Welcome to the
going
show,
on?
my friend. Welcome to the show. And as
Thank
in
you.
people can see, your handle is wrong speak. So I guess you are not politically correct.
Uh, Actually, sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not.
So you have a balance.
I have a balance. Yeah.
That's good. I think we should
Yeah,
all have some sort of balance. Um,
exactly.
but you are the founder of Wrong Speak Pub. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, Wrong Speak Publishing. It started off as just a blog for me to kind of rant uh, a while ago, but it's turned into a platform where we advocate for people to speak, speak for themselves,
Hmm.
to write openly, but just kind of write in a way where they're putting some thought behind it, but it's their own words. And we help to platform writers, and I do everything to support writers, even if they're not really writers. There have been some articles we've had from people who just want to finally like say their piece,
Hmm.
and it's been cathartic to have someone support them. And I know what that feeling is like, and that feeling led for me to be where I'm at today, actually.
Awesome. So how did you get to where you are now? How did this whole thing started? Give us a little background on how it got started. What went through your mind, before you even got to this point.
So I'm an IT guy by trade.
Mm-hmm.
um, I work in a regular job, and then 2020 hit. Actually, before I go into 2020, I am an IT guy by trade, but I'm also someone who's highly interested in the culture wars, politics. I've been following politics for a number of years. But I basically just kind of kept it to myself. It was something that I followed. I had my own opinions. Um, and I also went through some political transformations, so to speak, or awakening. Um, but I did all that stuff basically in privacy.
Mm.
I kept it to myself, and I just saw the world the way I wanted to see it. But I just didn't tell anybody what I thought, and I was fine with that. I wasn't on social media really. I had a Facebook account that was basically for talking to friends and family, if I was to do that at all. Um, so I'm a very, even today, so to speak, I'm a relatively private person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but 2020 hit, COVID came, and I started seeing changes around me, and then George Floyd and the whole situation surrounding George Floyd. And it wasn't necessarily the incident of George Floyd itself, but it was the reaction. It was all these narratives that were being created. Um, and it was frustrating because, when I did finally go on Facebook and look, it was like the only way to describe it was like everybody was having a panic attack. And nobody was able to kind of take a step back and say, this is unfortunate, but like these narratives aren't true.
Mm-hmm.
This is hyperbolic to say that I wake up every day worrying that a cop is going to kill me or something. Like, that's
Exaggerate,
ridiculous.
right?
That's
Everything was
exaggerated.
exaggerated. Okay.
Yeah. Um, but I felt like I couldn't express myself on social media, especially at that time. Um, I ended up going to free speech forums and just kind of just ask the question, like, am I the only one who sees this? And I got some, I guess, like confirmation that I'm not the only one. And I was finally able to just express how I felt. Um, and from there, I got some encouragement from people saying, actually, you should write more because of how I was able to convey how I felt, and do it in a pretty logical manner. Um, and so one day I just decided to sit down and start writing my book. Um, and I had an idea to write a book a couple of years prior, but I just didn't have, I didn't know what I wanted to write, basically. But I wanted to leave something for my son. And, that moment came and I just said, what, let me just sit down and start writing. And it took me about 9 months to completion. Decided to self-publish it, put it out myself. So basically all the gains that you've seen have been from since I published in the end of March 2021. And it's been an incredible ride to see that people actually want to hear what I have to say, enjoy the book, read it multiple times. I've had people highlight stuff that I've said. It's been amazing because I'm just some dude. And to get the opportunity to constantly express myself. And now I'm in the realm of writing part-time, actually, and transitioning slowly away from the IT field.
Dude, that's a great story, man. I'm telling you, that's a great story. See, when
Yeah.
when the whole George Floyd thing happened, as I mentioned, I'm an immigrant from Iran. I grew up with propaganda all my life. I know
Mm.
how it's constructed. I know how it's delivered. I know how it's controlled. Because the whole premise of a propaganda is play with people's feelings, right?
Yeah.
Now, granted, what happened to George Floyd, bad, no doubt. Okay, he shouldn't have died the way he died. Understood. But they made him a martyr,
Hmm.
and that's what they wanted as a propaganda key, to make it a martyr situation, because Nancy Pelosi herself came out and said, thank you, George Floyd, for for your sacrifice. Basically,
Right.
he became a martyr, right?
Right.
Um, and honestly, in my opinion, the problem for the black community just got even worse. It didn't improve their situation because they played them.
Yeah. And even with that, and this is not towards you per se, but this
Yeah.
is towards the narrative. When we talk about the black community, when we do talk about the black community, it's often aimed at basically poor black communities.
Right.
Um, and there's so much complexity when it comes to that entire situation. In urban areas, urban policing, it made the situation definitely worse. I know some people. I'm in New Jersey. I know someone who's a part of the NYPD. They'll
Hmm.
tell you tensions rose, right?
Hmm.
And when you're in those particular areas, you can feel this. You can feel it being tense
Right.
just by your own presence as a police officer. You're not trying to do anything wrong. You're just trying to be someone who is serving and protecting. And it made things worse. The
Mm.
police response times have gotten worse. Um, there's a demoralization campaign that's happened. Um, the defund the police movement, even though they claim it's not to defund the police, even though they call it defund the police.
Yeah.
Um, you know, all of it's nonsense, but all of it actually has real world implications because the there's almost like, I use New York City as an example because it's the closest city to me, but there's a 1-for-1 correlation, near 1-for-1 correlation as to where the crime is and the demographic of people that live there. And people would translate that into saying um, the most violent or the most crime is in the black neighborhood. But the reason I would say this is that the most victims are within these neighborhoods, the people who are surrounded by the chaos that's happening. And I don't think people understand, it doesn't take a lot of people to destroy a community.
No,
If you have,
you just need a handful of people, to be honest.
yeah, let's say you have 15 people, you can definitely make an entire area feel uncomfortable, feel unsafe. If they're armed, dangerous, breaking the law, breaking stuff,
Absolutely.
breaking into places, that alone, it's just like you said, it's a handful of people that can destroy an entire area. And when you have the police who say, I'm just going to show up afterwards, I'm not going to do anything preemptively, I'm not going to, if I see something, I'm not going until I'm called, I'm just going to stay in my car, I'm not going to walk the beat. When you have all these things that happen, ultimately more people get hurt, crime rises. And it doesn't help that you have all these district attorneys who want to lower sentences, no bail, just let them right out, second, third, fourth chances. All these things that they got their roots from that George Floyd movement, and it actually hurts people.
So I have to ask you, what are your thoughts about BLM, the organization?
Black Lives Matter is basically a Marxist front of an organization. They've said as much as what it is. They are just like any other Marxists. They claim to not like capitalism, but they love capitalism, and they're relatively good at it, or at least they were in 2020, with maximizing on their branding, just like a good capitalist would. So, they're basically, I would say, like fraudsters. I think that's the easiest way of putting it.
So I lost a lot of friends during COVID. They didn't die. I just lost them.
Yeah.
And the whole thing started actually from 2016 when Trump and Hillary were running. So that is actually was the first time I became very vocal about my political beliefs. I grew up in California for 15 years. I voted Democrat twice when I lived in California because that's when I became legal at the time and I could vote. And the only twice I voted was for a Democrat. Then I moved to Virginia. I was a bit more mature by then. But I was 28 when I moved. Obama was president. Obama was running to become a president. Definitely, he did not get my vote because I saw how he was being promoted. He came in as a community organizer, yet he never organized a single damn thing in his life. But regardless of that, I grew up in LA. Okay, LA has a huge Hispanic population. LA also has a huge poor Hispanic population. So, if in comparison you want to do with Chicago and LA, you got most of the black folks in Chicago, you got the most Hispanic peoples in LA. But the poverty level, they're almost the same in contrast, right? Violence level, almost the same. But for some reason, Chicago has a higher rate of murder than LA does. Because LA also has a mixture of like black community mixed with the Hispanic, so they kind of get along. They have an understanding. But like, what I always try to figure out, or like I've asked this question from several different people as to why they always tend to go and point the finger at the black community that you are the poorest. Why they're always going down that road saying that, hey, you are oppressed. You are worth nothing. You are not going to be able to do anything with your life. Right. And that takes me back to the time I was a kid, living with propaganda, they put crap in your head and you start to believe it. That this is actually happening. Right. And it puts me in an awe because I have many black friends, and they are the most successful people I've ever seen. And successful, it doesn't mean that you are filthy rich. Successful means you are living a simple life, or a good life, or a meaningful life, right?
Yeah, they're stable.
Right. You're stable. You have a girlfriend, wife, kids, family, car, house, condo, whatever. You're
Hmm.
stable. You have a job. You're not complaining that somebody is ahead of you. In fact, you're actually working as hard to get to that level or higher, right?
Right.
So you grew up here, I'm assuming, correct?
Hmm.
Um, I don't know how your uprising was. I don't know if you grew up. Did you grow up in New Jersey your entire life, or did you grow up somewhere else?
No, so I've lived in 5 states.
Okay.
Um, so
Which
I've
was
moved
the
quite a
best
bit.
and which was the worst out of these five states?
So my favorite place that I've lived in was in the Nashville area. I lived
Hmm.
there as an adult. Um, but the other 4 states I lived in before I was 18. So I
Hmm.
lived in 4 states as a kid. But Nashville is my favorite place. I'd love to go back there one day.
And what was the worst out of all the states?
I would only say worse because I don't have too many memories, and within those memories, they weren't the greatest. Detroit, because that's where I was born.
Okay. And have you gone back to Detroit since, or I'm sure you have family there?
Excuse me.
I have
Actually,
family
even though,
in Detroit, so.
excuse me. So, funny enough, I really don't have any family there. My mother moved there. My mother moved there, kind of chasing my father.
Hmm.
Um, we were born and we left, and my father stayed. Um, I had a not tumultuous, just like a neglectful relationship with my father. So I never went back to see him really. Um, Occasionally he would come by and see us, but that was basically it. So I never really had a reason to go back to Detroit, especially as an adult. So I haven't been back to Detroit in a long time. Actually, I take that back. There was one time we did go to visit to see like my mom's old friend, but
Hmm.
that was like I don't even remember how old I was.
Okay.
I think I was a teenager at the time, but we went back one time.
But so you live in New Jersey. New Jersey has a huge black population.
Yeah, in certain areas, yeah, we
So
we
yeah,
actually have a really large Hispanic population as well.
right. Puerto Ricans,
Yeah,
I think most of them are in New Jersey. Right? Is it Puerto Rican, or
we
is it
have
Mexican?
everything. We have
Okay.
Puerto Rican, Dominican, Honduran. Yeah, we have every. Uh,
How is it over there? Like, do you see the same level of pointing to poverty constantly in those areas? Like, do you see people constantly living the same style or same mentality as people live in Chicago, or people who they say the projects? I don't understand why even they named it the project, because that's, as soon as they say the project, it's poverty, crime, everything just comes to your head. So do
well,
you see that in New Jersey as well?
so the project it just references government housing. That's basically
Right.
it. And government housing comes in many forms these days. It could be Section 8, so you're staying in a regular apartment, but the government is supporting it. So it looks a little bit different depending on where you go. Um, some cities are definitely, um, yeah, they're just structured differently. But to answer your question, in um, New Jersey is mostly suburban or rural. We
Okay.
have a couple of major cities. So I would say, let's say Newark, Jersey City, and Trenton. I would say those are like the top three major cities. Um, they definitely have the rough areas, especially Trenton. Trenton's really bad, and Trenton's our state capital. Um, Part of the problem, though, is that Trenton doesn't have that strong of a local economy outside of the government. So unless you work at a government job in Trenton, the wage level is pretty low, um, and it kind of comes through. So it's very high crime, um, and that's actually not even the worst city. Now that I think about it, Camden Camden has gone back and forth between the highest murder rate per capita in the country. So like we have these like specific, very specific, and they're always urban areas when it comes to crime and when it comes to poverty. Um, I just don't know the relation between necessarily the government aspect and the crime or anything like that. But what's
I have
interesting
a
is,
theory. I don't know
Mhm,
if it's a right theory or not. My theory is
mhm,
they sardine pack these cities on purpose. And when you sardine pack a city, there's going to be only a certain amount of jobs available to
mhm,
fill, right? Um, so I mean, you can have restaurants all over the place. You can have grocery stores all over the place. It's all about location. It's all about availability. And each retailer, each restaurant can only handle a certain amount of employees, right? But once you have a city that's sardine packed with people,
mhm.
now you have 60 people to one job opening. And that sort of creates its own poverty section, right? That by itself, it creates a problem. And because I saw it in California, right? I saw it in LA. LA is legit sardine packed with just jamming people in, right? And all they do is build apartments, high rises, so they could bring more people in. But yet,
Mhm.
big box stores are closed. There's no more big box stores. There's no more Kmart. There's no more Sears. There's no more any of these warehouses where people actually can go in and work. All you see now is like small restaurants, small mom and pop shops. Um, those big box stores a lot have turned into apartment buildings, so more people coming in, but more restaurants are not opening. More stores are not opening. It's the same stores. You might have like a 2 or 3% increase in stores, but that doesn't justify the amount of people are pouring into those cities. Now,
Right.
do you think government assistance is the reason that people pour into these cities? I mean, sure, family could be one thing, friends could be another thing, but do you think uh, uh, more government assistance is that like more attractive to people to come into these like big cities?
Um, I would say for the most part, no. But it also depends on what city you're talking about. So I think most people move, like if they're not from that city, they're moving to a
Mhm.
city because there are more economic opportunities versus where they're coming from. So, like New York is a great example because I feel like most of the people I ever come across from who live in New York aren't originally from New York. Um, they're just like they transplant there and they want to be there. And a lot of times it's because there's job opportunity. So they're taking it. So there's a lot of job opportunities within the city of New York. And people from all over the place, if they're qualified, they come in and try to take them. I feel like it might be the same situation, maybe in a place like Los Angeles. That's why people move there. You have Hollywood, you have entertainment industry that's there. So people are specifically moving there for those opportunities. The government housing aspect, I feel like what ends up happening is this: because of those job opportunities that do exist, it does the demand goes up for housing. So that's one aspect. So when
Mm.
the demand goes up for housing, prices increase, and the prices not only increase for the wealthier areas, increases all across. So those drabby places before that weren't so expensive are now kind of expensive, or actually are expensive to get to because the entire market's gone up because there's such demand and there's limited supply, especially in a place like Los Angeles. There's a limited supply, so everybody's being priced out. Um, the government aspect can come in where the government is trying to assist and trying to help certain people, but I think the government housing and the government support, I think it's very situational. I think it's situational as far as the people who are on it. where, like what city. Um, each city, in that city, each state looks different as far as what they support.
Hmm.
So the bluer states tend to have more government services versus the red states. Um, a state like Tennessee has no state taxes.
Hmm.
They don't have a ton of support. But when you go into Nashville, you don't really see a whole lot there. It just looks different.
So I'll give you a little statistics on government housing. In
Hmm.
LA, for example, right now, Section 8 housing, there's a 12-year waiting list.
I'm sure.
But there's a trick to it, right? You could go to a different state, get government housing there, then it's transferable. Then they could transfer it into California, and you don't have to be in a waiting list anymore.
Wow.
You just transfer your uh, uh, Section 8 to a different state, and California will accept it, and they'll put you. You'll find a place. In Virginia, for example, in the county I live in, it's a 6-year waiting list at this point. Um, so it's not easy to get Section 8. If
Right.
for those people who have Section 8, they hold on to it with dear life
Right.
because it is not easy to get Section 8. Now, government assistant, it's a different story. California will happily give you food stamp if you fall under the poverty level, which is $23,600.
Hmm.
So if you make less than $23,600, you will definitely get food stamp. You'll definitely get government assistance up to about $700 a month. Um, you get free medical. Is it medical or Medicare? I can't remember. Uh, Health benefit. They'll give you free
Hmm.
health benefit, right? And especially if you have kids, you are good to go until the kid's 18 years old.
Right.
Those benefits are good until 18 years old, as long as you're making less than $23,600. Um, Virginia, it's a little bit different. The poverty level in Virginia is a little bit, it is lower. Virginia is $22,300. I don't know. Each state has their own line of,
Right.
you know, um, and what I'm trying to say is, instead of programming people to stay on welfare, especially when you go to the poor community, you have people like 2 or 3 generations they're on welfare. 2 or 3 generations. They teach their kids on how to stay on welfare. They teach their grandkids on how you can use the system to stay on welfare. You don't have to work a day in your life. You get your nails done. You can have your iPhone. You can do this. And you don't have to step foot into a job. And people fall victim into those things. And once you fall victim into that environment, once you get sucked into that environment, now you are controlled.
Right.
Now they'll control every aspect of your life. And this is where I've always said, I don't like big government. I want small government. I want
Hmm.
government to be there when there actually needs to be there for infrastructure repair, and welfare is made for people who actually really, really, really need it, right? The disabled, the people who can't really work, right? The people who have like some mental disability that they can't function in a working environment, right? Like they have ADD, ADHD, like severe, or like this. I mean, it amazes me where a guy who has no legs on a wheelchair and is the most successful individual because their brain still works,
Hmm.
right? They got a functioning brain. They got functioning arms. They just don't have legs, and they become super successful. And what I see is these kids, they all I hear, oh, I'm a victim, or because I'm black, they don't give me work, or I was like, dude, I didn't graduate college. I'm a high school graduate,
Hmm.
and how did I make it in life? I didn't have any handouts. I did not grow up rich. I came to this country poor. I grew up learning how to survive. I later down in life, I learned some trade crafts. I bought some tools. I used them. I played with them. When I was younger, I used to just mess around with my car. Open the wheel. What's behind the wheel? I just observed. Then I took one screw off, put it back in. Then next time I went, I took two screws off. I put it back in. Then next thing you know, I'm changing brakes. I'm changing oil. I'm changing spark plugs. Then I was like, my friends tell me, "Hey man, I need to change my brakes. Bring it over, bro. I'll do it too I do it for $30." My friend turned into six friends. Six friends, they brought their cars over. I changed their brakes, $30 a pop. That was $180, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they're like, "Hey, I need to do an oil change. Bring it over, bro. I'll do it $20 a pop." So I mean, it's not rocket science at this point, right? But then I see kids fall into the trap where they become victimized. They play the victim card, and and you are your worst enemy. I always tell myself, you
Yeah.
become your worst enemy, and I tell my kids, don't say I can't, say how can I?
Mm-hmm.
Because once you say the word can't, you already program yourself to the fact that you are not capable of doing what in front of you. You're done. You just discourage yourself for every aspect that could be, it could be an action for you to actually make something out of that decision, right? And
Right.
and and I think that's the worst thing. It's happening to the society. I think the society's failing big time at this point, especially with social media, where all these people make these like stupid videos, and it goes back to the propaganda aspect, right? Because you see these like people make these like short videos. It's very emotional. They may they have the sad music going in the background. They put some clips together, and the sad story of X, Y, and Z. And this is why
Mm-hmm.
they never make it in this country. This country is the worst country on earth because George Floyd, because January 6th, or because X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. So uh, you are an individual who succeeded in this country, born and raised here. I'm sure you have hit your own speed bumps throughout your lifetime. Nobody has not hit a speed bump. Everybody has a speed bump. Everybody has a hill to climb. So when you get to a challenge that it's a little difficult for you, how do you proceed? How do you tell yourself that I need to go across this hill and see what's on the other side?
Um, it's more of me just realizing like I don't have a choice.
Hmm.
You know,
So you're forcing
um, I mean, I put it like this. When I was younger, there were a couple times that we were homeless. Um, and one time we had to stay at a homeless shelter, and it was myself, my sister, and my mom. And my father was nowhere to be found. He paid his child support. That was basically his involvement in my life. But outside of that, it's my mom dealing with all the entire situation. But my mother never wanted government assistance. She, throughout those entire experience, she was working.
Hmm.
Maybe she worked long hours. Maybe she had to do what she had to do. But we were in that homeless shelter with the intention to leave.
Right.
You
They,
know,
they had a mission, right?
and
You had a mission.
yeah, and we were only there. I want to say 2 months, no longer than 3 months.
Okay.
It felt like a long time, but it really wasn't. Um, and we found some place to go, and we got out of there. Um, but the reason I tell that story is because my mother. I look back and I think my mother's example was that like you just have to keep going. Like you have no choice but to do something. Um, so to me there is no other choice. That what, go on government assistance or try to find some way to steal stuff and break, like, no, like I have no choice but to keep moving and find some other way, make more money, switch jobs, I have to do something, because sitting back and doing nothing wasn't how I was raised. I wasn't raised to be this particular way. And to be honest, it took a long time to get to where I'm at today, being fully sustainable, not having to be reliant off of my mom or anybody else. Um, there was definitely ups and downs in my 20s, uh, trying to get my head straight, you know, psychologically, going through stuff, depression, anxiety, while still working and raising my son. Um, so it's definitely difficult. It's definitely difficult, but at the end, you just have to keep going. And especially for me, being a father, I had no choice but to take some risks, but to do what I have to do to still be able to take care of my son and pay for my son, make sure that he's good. Because at that point, it's bigger than me.
Right.
You know.
But there's nothing wrong with that, though.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be ashamed of what you've done or how you lived and where you are now. There's nothing to be ashamed of. That's part of
No.
the life experience. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
We're not on this earth to become millionaires. If you become a millionaire, that's a plus.
Hmm.
you know. But I don't think anybody was born to become a millionaire. That's a goal. Everybody has. Every child has. Every man has. Every woman has. Everyone's, oh, I want to be a millionaire one day, right? You hear that 1,000 times, but you don't become a millionaire just by saying I want to become a millionaire. There's a lot of work involved in that, right? There's a lot
Hmm.
of sacrifices that come with that status. So, I have this conversation with my wife all the time, and we always go back and forth, and I tell her, look, I'm doing this because I want to be I want to succeed in something that I want to do.
Hmm.
What I've gotten now, I am successful. I do have a great job. Um, we do have a great family, and everything's great. But I'm still hungry. For
Hmm.
more. So uh, I don't know what that more is yet. Um, but I have a vision that I like to achieve, and goes back to your point. There's going to be some highs and lows in life,
Hmm.
and you have to go through the lows to get to the high. And even though when you get up that high, you're gonna fall, and it's okay to fall. It's okay, because now you know how to get back up to that level, and now once you get to level again, you're gonna go higher. So, uh, I tell her, I tell her, I was like, look, at this point now, I have fallen, so I am working it back up to what I was and surpass. And this is something that they don't teach in school. This is something that they don't talk about in school system these days. The school system is so jacked up right now. It's so screwed up. I don't know how old your son is. Is he in school yet, or
Oh, he's 17.
he's 17? Wow. So he's about to become an adult.
Yeah.
So I hope he goes to college. I hope he does his thing, and I hope he doesn't fall into the tunnel vision that they put in school in the college campuses. I hope he has a good dad, so I'm sure you're gonna guide him to the right path. But the school system these days is so jacked up. It's so jacked up that the indoctrination is out of control, and
Hmm.
I'm sure you've seen it. I've been through it. I'm going through it now because my kids are young. Um, but like our school system, or like the school boards, holy crap! I cannot deal with these people. They
Yeah.
and yesterday the superintendent was just fired because he covered up the sexual harassment story. He tried to cover
Oh,
it. I'm part of
you're in Loudoun County.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm in Loudoun County, so the superintendent just got fired yesterday. Because the Virginia AG started doing an investigation, and they saw there was a witness tampering going on.
Mhm.
So, I am more fearful for my kids than I am for myself. Um, and the problem is not just in this county. The problem is nationwide. So, so you know, for somebody like yourself who have lived here, and you wrote the book, you know, and you have it displayed behind you, the Black Victory. Um, give us a little insight of what's in the book, and I'm gonna put the link in the description for people to go and actually buy your book.
Yeah. So the book, obviously discusses race, but it's much deeper than that.
Mhm.
Um, the race component is kind of the superficial layer. Um, or in some ways, I call it like the case study, because you can swap black out with other demographics and it would match up um, similarly. But what I'm talking about is human behavior, childhood development, the importance of fathers, the importance of family in general. Um, the largest aspects of the book, or I'm sorry, the largest chapters of the book are centered around family and children. Um, and I talk a lot about my childhood. I talk a lot about how not having my father in my life impacted me. Um, I talk about, becoming a father and understanding my role as someone who didn't know what a father was supposed to look like, to becoming the father I am today,
Mhm.
and kind of growing from there. Um, so the book is, in many ways, it's a biography about me, because I tell a lot of stories. I do a lot of storytelling throughout the book. Um, the majority of it is real. Some of it is a little bit fictional, like just storytelling, just to illustrate a point.
Yeah.
But the stories about me are 100% real. Um, and yeah, I would say the racial component is part of the book for sure, but the deeper level is the humanity aspect. Because in the end, we have more in common than we do different. Um, the vast majority of people want the same thing, right? They just have different ways of going about it.
Mhm.
We, for the most part, care about our children, or at least we should. But there are a lot of people out there who are black and not black, who grew up in a very similar situation as me or worse. And that's something that we need to talk more about. The United States is number one in single parenthood
Yeah.
in the world. The United Kingdom, I believe, is number two. And there's something there when we're looking at, especially in the United States, the aspect of crime, um, the aspect of gang violence. Gang violence is basically lost boys who just found each other, and they are behaving in destructive manner, because they were never shown really any male guidance. They were never shown how to balance their emotions. Emotional regulation is really important for children, um, and that's what fathers are supposed to be there for. They're the regulators of emotion, especially for boys, because boys are destructive, and if you don't teach them how to control that behavior, they'll hurt people, right, and hurt themselves as well. Um, so when you see people who act like they have no boundaries, they have no emotional regulation, they go from 0 to 100 in a second. These are people who have lacked that, and it's impacting their lives, it's impacting society, and they have no boundaries when it comes to that. And that your father's supposed to teach you boundaries. For men and women, you're supposed to teach you boundaries to respect yourself. um, Granted, both parents can do it, but men do it in a different way.
Yeah.
um, and it's a different way, and it's impactful. So it might sound quote unquote patriarchal to say this, but men are natural disciplinarians.
Right.
I've seen it too many times where it's different. It's different how children react to men than they do to women.
So why do you think they push single parenthood constantly on social media, on news networks? Especially Democrats always are pushing it. Why are they pushing single parenthood? Why? I mean, there's all this talk about women can do it on their own. Women don't need men, and it always blows up back in their face, right? Um, because you know, parenthood is not about who's in charge.
Right.
If you're married, you already know the man is not in charge. So we're in charge of certain things,
Right.
and
It's a balance.
it's a balance, right? We're in charge of certain
Mhm.
things. The women are in charge of certain things, and we do all have our conflicts. We butt head on certain decisions and certain things, but it's a balancing act, right? But why this society is pushing single parenthood so hard?
It's the I think it's on the higher level. There's an overcorrection when it comes to women. I believe. I believe there's a feminist dogma that everybody now takes hold of, where same kind of thing. Women have been oppressed, and we now need to correct society to make it absolutely equal in every which way for women. Um, Now, providing women equal opportunity is one thing, but what we're seeing today is misandrous. It is anti-male. It is discarding masculinity. It's discarding the importance of fathers. It's discarding, um, does he really even need to be here? I make my own money, right? It's reducing men to being income earners, and that's it. Um, and and what ends up happening is we don't critique women when they make bad choices, right? We excuse it, right? We use the government to subsidize it. You know, there aren't there's no social repercussions to single parenthood like there were years ago, right? Um, there there is no shame, right? And we've actually made the word shame seem shameful, right? But shame actually has its usage. Like
Right.
shame is actually kind of important in society. You should shame certain things. Like if there was some guy we found that was a pedophile, we should shame that guy. Why? Because we don't want to make it seem like that behavior is cool with us.
But
Like,
now
no,
it's
you're
normalized.
what's that?
But now it's normalized.
Not quite. Not
Well,
quite.
I'll tell you why. Because you don't say they'll come back and say, "Oh, don't say pedophile." That word it's offensive to them. It hurts their feeling. You have to address them as a minor attracted person.
But even that, I hear what you're saying. I'm not saying you're wrong, but the amount of people who actually believe that is incredibly small.
I understand.
Um, and so what I'm saying is the vast majority of people are just like you and me will say, we don't want pedophiles around us.
Right.
Create every law to make their life miserable. If it is unfair for them, good. It should be, right? We're perfectly good with ostracizing pedophiles. That is a shame aspect to it. I can't even say ostracizing pedophiles is part of shaming. You're supposed to shame them. You're showing that something is not acceptable. I'm not saying you do the same thing with single parenthood or anything like that, but there's a level of shame when it comes to it. There's a level of disgust when it came to it generations ago. It was something that you didn't do. You used to hear stories about uh, pregnant girls disappearing and then coming back. Right? Like, what happened? Why were they doing that? Because the family was trying to hide that shame.
Right.
right? Now, was it a
Which
good
is
thing,
true in the
bad thing?
Muslim world. In the Muslim world, that's a huge shame. In the
Yeah,
Muslim world, if a girl gets pregnant and she's not married, that's a death sentence.
that's next level shame, but
Yeah.
uh,
No, it is.
but
They get stoned. Like in some
yeah,
countries, and I tell you, in Iran, in some villages, that actually will happen. The girl will
yeah,
get stoned. In Afghanistan, it will happen. She will get
oh
stoned.
yeah,
It could even get to an honor killing where the brother or the dad can actually kill her. In
mhm,
Pakistan, that can actually carry out a sentence, which is called honor killing, where she can actually be killed by her brother or her dad, and the father or the brother will not be charged with murder, right?
mhm,
So adultery, for example, if a woman commits adultery, she will get stoned. So just to you know, uh, just to say that, but to that point, I read this, I heard this thing. It was hilarious to me. Some guy on a show was saying men will kill men, women will kill society. And I think that was the funniest thing I heard in my life. But it's so true. It is so, so true because you see all these white liberal women, right, standing up for the
mhm,
black community. They always say these things. They're like, oh, I'm standing up for them.
mhm,
Yet they have zero clue what that community goes through. Absolutely no clue. They don't know what poverty is. The same one who is advocating, oh, I'm fighting for justice, I'm fighting for their rights, have never actually tasted poverty or have never actually tasted, single parenthood, has actually never tasted a single struggle in their life, right? Because now it's just an emotional society. The society just became an emotional mess, right? Everybody's emotional. And who benefits out of this emotion? The government. Now the government comes in because now
mhm,
everyone's emotional. Now they play on their emotions. This is why you have all these campaigns, all these voting crap that's been going on. All this stuff. What do they do? They play with people's emotions, right?
right,
This is the best way to control a crowd is by emotions, right? So they bring some guy who was disenfranchised on whatever reason. They bring a girl, then they're like, oh, we are diverse, oh, we are inclusive. They use buzzwords now, right? Like the buzzwords are
mhm,
the key way to get in people's hearts, and how you to get into people's hearts is to make them feel bad or sad, right? Because to that liberal white person, every black person she sees is out of the projects. So if somebody sees you, they're like, oh, he was in the projects yesterday. Just yesterday, I saw him there. I think I saw him there, but I feel bad for him
mhm,
because he's black, or he's Hispanic, or he's this, or he's that. Right? They'll just do that as a generalization so they could control the crowd. Right? This is like we saw it during COVID. They put so much fear in people's heart. You see how they controlled everybody? You can't walk around without a vaccine card. You
mhm,
can't, talk to your peers without a mask on. You can't, be 6 foot, less than 6 foot apart if you don't have the shot. You saw it.
yeah,
I saw it. I called the bullshit right when it came out. I said this is the best fear tactics to use. My mom was begging me. She was begging me to go get the shot. I said, Mom, I love you, but no, I will refuse this until the day I die. I don't trust it for a bit. I don't give a damn who was the president when this thing came out. That's not my
mhm,
concern. You know, I said this is a 100% individual's choice, and it should be that way. It should always be that way. But they started the campaign. You saw, unvaccinated are the problem. The unvaccinated is the unvaccinated problem. They're killing everybody. They're killing your grandmas. They're killing your grandpas. Christmas is coming. They're the cause of death. X, Y, and Z. Right. So they played
Mhm.
that game. Uh, Even in the office, like in my office space, man, we got brutal. Like we were like second class citizens. We were being treated as
Yeah.
second class citizens, right? But that's what the society has turned into, right? Enemies. They just want one side and the other side to be one after one another, right? And truly, I lost good friends because of all this division.
Mhm.
Not because I chose to, it's because they didn't want to be around me, right? I never said I don't want to be around them. They said they don't want to be around me because I don't have the shot. I might kill their mom. As if I don't have my own parents.
Yeah.
Right? As if I don't have a mother-in-law. As if I don't have a wife or kids. Like I choose, I'm supposed to make a choice for their loved ones over mine.
Mhm.
My loved ones don't really matter to me as much as their loved ones matter to them, right? So so that's what happened. And I think and man, hats off to you to how far you have come. And I wish you even more to what you have achieved now. Because I know you're not stopping now because you have more to do. And
Yeah.
and and same thing for your son. I wish him best of luck. I hope he succeeds in whatever endeavor he's about to go. And and props and one only thing I like to say is, um say this to your son. Don't say I can't, say how can I.
Yeah.
Just leave that in your head or put it on a post-it note. I
No,
think that's the best way to get over a hurdle or a fear. And I have a scare of heights. I hate
mhm.
heights, right? And I hate ladders. But once a year, when it's Christmas time, I push myself to climb a 20-foot ladder to put decorations up. So, and every time I go up, I was like, I hate this, but I'm gonna do it. I'm almost there. Almost there. I get up there, I put the damn thing up, I come right down. I was like, all right, I don't have to do this for another month. Go back up there and get the damn thing again. So, um, but yeah, any last words for the audience, Adam?
Um, Everything that's happened for me has been a blessing. Um, it's been incredible to see what happens when you start speaking up for yourself,
Hmm.
and people will be surprised how many ways that you can actually do so. I've been very fortunate to be published in multiple publications. I write basically weekly now for the New York Post, um, which is like something I for sure didn't expect. I just had an article come out today for Newsweek. I'm now a columnist for Human Events. I write for my own Substack. I'm just I'm trying to make writing as an art form go bigger,
Hmm.
especially for people who are independents, people who are on the right, people who are struggling to express themselves, and want to get their message out. Um, and let Wrong Speak be an avenue as well to support them. Um, and also, I'll be, if anybody is interested, I'll be in Phoenix, Arizona, for America Fest next
Awesome.
week. We'll have a booth there. So this is another progression for me. I'll have a booth, be selling some books, talking to people about Wrong Speak, what we're trying to do, and and try to get people to take freedom of speech to the next level. Um, Take freedom of speech from just like a random tweet and a random Facebook post to a long, thoughtful article, um, and fully express yourself, and have a place where us writers who were, we were all amateur at one point, can support each other and give feedback, and improve on their craft and improve their writing voice, um, and see how we can grow from there. So, like, for example, um, actually, someone recently reached out and asked, like, can you help me as far as getting into a certain publication? I said, sure. Gave them some contact information, used that as a connect, got in, and they got published. Same
Oh,
thing. I have a friend, uh, a friend of mine. She just got published with the New York Post, and I helped to facilitate it. Um, so I'm. It's not just me that I'm looking out for. I'm trying to help other people to get their exposure, to help other people get their writing out there, to have their voices out there, because we need more voices. We can't complain about the mainstream media dictating everything that goes on if we're not actually trying to be a part of the conversation. Um, so that's why I'm trying to do everything that I'm doing.
and maybe you can help me. I just hate writing, man. My writing sucks. I like talking. I just can't write. um, but man, you're one good example of freedom of speech where it doesn't discriminate of who the person is. You know what I mean? This is why freedom of speech in this country is so valuable. It's so important to have. Where you know freedom of speech is good to a point that you start making threats against the individual. That's no longer freedom
Right.
of speech,
But that's
right?
not speech.
But that's not speech, exactly, right?
Right.
You and I can go throw curse words at each other for days, and that doesn't constitute any threat, nothing,
Mhm.
right? um and we could throw jabs at each other. We could, your mama jokes or whatever. That that's just freedom of speech, right? You and I would just shooting the shit, and that's it. Um,
Even more so, and sorry to cut you off, but even
no,
more so, the best part about freedom of speech, and you would understand coming from Iran, we can talk shit about the president of the United States. We can talk shit about
it's
every government
crazy how
official.
you do that.
Power, right? We can criticize power, and I think either a people don't realize how in a lot of places you're incapable of doing that without suffering some major consequences, or b they don't exercise it enough, right?
Right.
Their guy is in power, so they don't say anything about it until the other guy is in power, then they say something about it. You need to always criticize power. I don't care if they have an R or D next to their name. Always criticize power.
Oh, I go after both sides, man. I'm not
Yeah,
a Republican. I'm a conservative, and
right,
I lean towards the Republicans because because of policies, not
right.
because of the art, right? Um, the current Republicans in place are spineless. They're worthless. So you know, and I can't do anything about it. I could just criticize them. You know, and I don't have the large platform that other people have, but I do what I do with what I have.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? With the hopes of it grows, you know, with the hopes of, like having finding individuals like you to come on the show and tell us your story, how you got here. And, uh, I don't work with, hey, I did you a favor, I brought you on my show, now you have to do me a favor. I don't play like that. That's not me. Um,
Mhm.
uh, I believe that everybody should, at least put in the work. Everybody should at least, work as hard as they can to get where they want to be. Your success is based on how much you actually put into it.
Right.
So, that's the way I look at it. Now, if I come out, if there's a day I hit you, I was like, hey man, do you have a phone number I could call this person? You say yes, no, maybe, I don't feel like giving it to you. It's not the end of the day for me, or it's not the fact that, you are not supporting me. You know what I mean? It's, people need to understand that. People need to understand that sometimes, you know, if an individual come across an opportunity, they cannot just openly share it with everybody or the entire world.
Right.
There's stuff that you can't do for some other people, you know. And believe me, I've been burned so many times. so um so I completely understand. But Adam, you know what? I can't say this enough. I'm so glad that you came on the show. I'm so glad you were actually able to share your story with us. And just the pure success that you've had thus far amazes me and should amaze everybody else, that this country allows you to do that.
Yeah.
This country gives you the opportunity. This is the land of opportunities, right? This is the all you had to do was write. You didn't need anything special equipment. You didn't need anything of substance to. You just had to write. You just wrote,
Right.
and that's what you got, right? You remember what I tweeted? How did you do that? You're like, I wrote a lot.
Yeah.
That was your response to me, right? And that's exactly what you did. You
Mhm.
know, I just asked the question, how did you do that? And you just said, I wrote a lot. So that's your hard work, my friend. And kudos to you, hats off to you. And I wish you all the best. And I hope I can get you on the show again, within like next couple of months, just to see where you are. And you are a friend of the show, and you are welcome anytime you want. You want to come on the show, my friend. If you want to come on and unload on somebody, you're more than welcome. Hit me up. It's like, hey man, I need to unload. Get me on your show, and I'll bring you on. No
All right.
questions asked. I'll bring you on. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, Adam. Thank you for coming in, my friend. Um,
Thank you.
I'll put his Twitter account in the link in the description. I'll put a link to his book. Excuse me. It is the end of my throat, so I gotta sign off, guys. Have a good night, and God bless everybody.